We are back again. It is 10 a.m. on March 20th, Wednesday. This is the Goods Fam on Twitch. I'm Philly Good, and I'm going to be on the MPCX continuing going through the MPC Bible. So I'm at chapter 21, Sound Design Tricks. And if you'd like to follow along, you can start up your MPCs, and if you have the MPC Bible, you can even follow right along with the tutorial files that you can load up to your MPC. So yeah, if you can, follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Here every day 10 to 11 a.m. I missed a couple days, but still trying to figure out the schedule and how things are going to work out, but I imagine I'm going to try and make it 10 to 11 a.m. every day, or maybe every day but 2 days a week. We'll see. I'm going to start up with just an empty project right now, and we'll continue where we left off here. Gonna get a sip of water before I go. If you can, please jump in the chat. I'm gonna try and get 5 people in the chat again today if it's possible. So if you've been here for 10 minutes or more, you can do that. Alright, so we're creating a more open sounding snare right now. So let me just see. I'm going to see the last project that we were working on here. If maybe... I'm going to go into the MPC Bible tutorial files, chapter 21 folder. See, what were we working on previously? We would have probably loaded some file. I'm gonna check out the fakescratches.xpj, load that up. I imagine that has what we're looking for on it, and we'll try and continue on from where we were. Alright, creating a more open sounding snare. Reverb and delay are usually considered send effects and are typically mixed with the existing sound rather than completely replacing the sound like an insert effect does. However, there's no rule that says you can't use reverb or delay as an insert effect. So let's look at a way we can add some subtle ambience to a snare in conjunction with some compression and EQ. On pad B05, let me turn up the volume a bit. So on B05, they placed a snare which was extracted from a closed mic stem from a multi-track drum recording. Typically, when recording a snare, you would also mix together the signal from an overhead microphone which would result in a more open snare sound with some of the natural room ambience. Without this overhead mic mix, we're left with quite a flat and short snare sound. But we can try to emulate the more open snare sound using a combination of effects, as well as take the opportunity to apply a little creative EQ. Take a look and listen at pad B06 to hear the result. On pad B06, they inserted the Dynamics Akai Pro compressor vintage. I don't see that there. Well, let's add it then. Dynamics Akai Pro compressor vintage. They've driven it reasonably hard, the input value. They have it at 11. With a fairly low threshold and medium compression ratio. So the threshold they have at minus 21 here, and the ratio they have it at an 11. This really helps open up the snare. They also use the compressor to help boost the rather quiet volume of the original snare, and you can hear it sounds much louder thanks to the initial squeezing and subsequent output compensation applied. So I can see on attack they have it on 5, and the release they have it at a 75. The knee they have at a 65. And the output at a 24. Wow. That's wild. Okay. On insert 2, they applied some delay. Well, maybe if I turn that off, the decimator. Okay, I'm going to change what they have on here and remove the decimator and put on what they have, which is the delay reverb, Akai reverb small. With very gentle settings that represent a short, subtle room ambience. Notice that unlike the insert effects, reverb is a send effect, so they've adjusted the dry-wet value to control the mix of affected signal with the unaffected. They use the dry-wet value of 33, which is 33% of the affected signal. They then use a 2-band EQ. What are they talking about on insert 3? Two-band EQ on insert 3. I don't know where the 2-band EQ is. Let's see, it must be under EQ and filter. Two-band. Okay. I'm not following what they're doing here because it seems a little weird. They said they used a 2-band EQ on insert 3. This is the only 2-band type of EQ thing that I can see that I can put on there. And then they want to put it at a 5600 hertz region, but like the high frequencies are already at 5600 hertz here, so that maybe that's what they wanted. Alright, sounds good. Let's move on. So apparently that's going to add some additional brightness to the snare. Woo! That's wild. Alright. Finally, if you take a quick peek in the envelope screen, the original sound has a bit of noise at the end, which was being amplified by the compression. So they added a little decay to fade this out a little. So what did they put for the decay here? They put it at a 73 instead. All in all, a much more lively snare. Using reverbs and delays in sound design. If you're using programs for sound design purposes to create standalone samples, it's not considered good practice to add reverbs or delays because the ambience it adds is set in stone and could make the sound unusable at a later date. This is, of course, not a rule, and there's nothing stopping you from using a reverb or delay as an insert effect if you wish, especially if you feel it's adding something unique to the sound. In the example above, adding the reverb very subtly has given the snare a very slight ambience that isn't actually identifiable. It just gives the snare a bit more life, so I would be more than happy to use this, even if the sound was destined for standalone use in a separate drum kit. Okay, take a little sip and we'll continue. Creating a tight and crunchy snare from a live snare. Now, let's look at achieving the opposite. Taking a very live and open sounding snare and creating something more tight and dry sounding. Check out the snare on pad B09. This is an acoustic snare. I don't know. I don't think that's the right kit. Oh, that must be the kit they're talking about there. B09. Yeah, sorry, I was on kit A there. I was doing all those changes to the wrong sound. Okay, anyway. Now we're going to work on B09. Alright, gotcha. Creating a tight and crunchy snare from a live snare. Now let's look at achieving the opposite. Taking a very live and open sounding snare and creating something more tight and dry sounding. Check out the snare on pad B09. This is an acoustic snare recorded in a very live room, so has plenty of ambience and natural decay. Let's use some of the techniques we've already discussed in this chapter to effectively remove some of the ambience and make more of a hip-hop style snare. Okay. In program edit, effects, add the air transient. Where's the air transient? Okay. So it's in the Dynamics Air Music folder. This is a transient shaping effect, just like the Akai transient shaper effect we used previously. The Air version is slightly more flexible as it allows us to actively shape the attack, not just reduce or embellish it. A negative attack value is going to soften our snare, so let's start increasing that attack value, and it's going to make the snare really crack. Try an attack of 90%. Okay. Alright, sounds good. So increasing the attack shape seems to shorten the attack phase, making the crack even more pronounced. Try an attack shape of 80%. Finally, the sustain will control how long the snare decays for. Positive values will elongate the decay. Try it if you want to make the snare sound even more live. But here we really want to it says fighting everything up. I think they might have wanted to say brighten everything up or tighten everything up. I don't know. So we need to focus on reducing the sustain with negative values. While continually tapping B09, start reducing the sustain value and listen to the snare tail get shorter and shorter. The key here is to know when to stop. You will need some decay even for a tight sounding snare. So try a sustain of minus 28%. You can hear their version on pad B10. Now, we've previously used Akai's bit reduction effects in this chapter, but let's now try one of Air's. In Insert 2, add an instance of the Air Lo-Fi effect. It's in the Harmonix Air Music folder. The Air Lo-Fi is similar to Akai's resampler, but as is often the case with the Air plugins, there are more controls and options should you need them. Alright. Here though, I'm going to use one of the presets which I find very nice indeed. Vintage Hardware 1. Alright. This instantly gives our snare a lovely, warm crunch. My version is on pad B11. They also tweaked the amp envelope decay and the filter envelope screen to shape the decay a little more. I see. It changed it quite a bit. Another nice option with the Air effects is to use the Air Stereo Width plugin. That's under Modulation Air Music. Okay. that'll create a mono sound from our stereo drum sample. This will help provide some punch to our snare. Tap on the Insert 3 slot and insert an instance of Air Stereo Width. Okay. Keep the default settings as they are, but reduce the width from 100 to 0%. Their version is on B12. Compare it to the original B09. That's a very different vibe. Okay. Yeah, sounds totally different. Alright. Creating FX racks. Okay, before we start that, I'll just take a quick sip here. If you've created a combination of FX inserts that you might like to reuse, you can save them as an FX rack. Go to the effects page. Okay. Oop. Tap on the disk icon. Save FX rack. And give your rack a name, for example, live snare rack. Okay. The MPC will automatically save your effects rack to the current location. You can recall and load any previously saved user effects rack by hitting the user effects rack icon on the effects page. So user effects rack where's that? Okay, I see. It's this icon right here. This is your user effects rack icon on the effects page. So once you save your own, you can just hit that and they're right in there. You can just load them up then. Okay. That's very cool. However, this one here is the factory effects racks, and that just drops out all the factory effects. But your user effects can be saved right there. Okay. And load it up from there, but you can save them. Okay. That's how you save the effects racks, is with that icon, the save one. Okay. Effects racks. Interesting. The preset ones and tweaking them, but I didn't know that I could just save my own effects racks, so that's pretty neat. So you can also load a number of ready-made effects racks by tapping on the Akai folder on the effects page, as I just pointed out. And then, yeah, it doesn't really get into that because we've been taking a look at all of those already. It's just a quick shortcut to get to those. All right. Now we're going to check out side chain compression using the Mother Ducker. I've tried to play with the Mother Ducker and I didn't know what I was doing, so I don't think I did anything. Alright, but we're going to check it out today. So let's get into this. Earlier in this chapter, we used a compressor to effectively squash the peaks and troughs of a particular sound. But now I want to introduce you to a different way of using a compressor, side chain compression. Side chain compression is a particular sound. In electronic music, it's commonly used to help a kick punch through the mix, especially when the bass line shares similar frequencies to the kick. From the Chapter 21 folder, enter the side chain subfolder and load up the project file sidechain.xpj. Alright, sequence 1. No side chain. Contains a 2-bar beat consisting of some drums on track 1 and a bass line on track 2. So hit play start. While you can certainly hear the kick under the bass line, it's not particularly defined, mainly because the kick and the bass both share similar low frequencies. Select sequence 2. Press play start for sidechain. In this sequence, they use some sidechain compression to give the kick more space and definition in the mix. Compare sequence 1 and sequence 2 a few times. Focus your ears specifically on the kick to hear the subtle differences while sidechaining can be happening. So yeah, I was trying to hear the subtle differences, and it's very difficult to hear it. I don't have a trained ear, I guess, but side chaining. Let's check it out. Standard compression versus side chain compression. So what's happening in sequence 2? Well, normally if you slap the standard compressor across the bass track, that compressor would start compressing the bass whenever the output level of the bass exceeds the threshold set in the compressor. Pretty standard stuff, but this, however, would not achieve our goal of making room for the kick. With sidechain compression, we still slap a compressor across the bass track, but this compressor is no longer controlled by the bass level. Instead, we side route the kick drum to this compressor and it exceeds the threshold set in the compressor starts compressing the bass. The result? Whenever the kick plays, the bass level is reduced, thus giving more room in the mix for the kick, which in turn adds definition to the kick and stops it merging with the bass line. When the kick isn't playing, the bass isn't compressed, so it continues at its normal level. By adjusting the compressor settings, we now control how subtle this difference is, from really obvious pumping to the more subtle changes that they've used in their example. Interesting. So let's check it out. Setting up the mother ducker. Side chaining on the MPC is handled by using two separate effects, the mother ducker and the mother ducker input. So the mother ducker is the actual compressor, so must be inserted across the sound we wish to reduce in volume. For example, the bass. Okay. The mother ducker input must be inserted on the sound that we want to use to control the compressor. In this case, the kick. Wow, okay. So in main, we're going to select sequence 1. And we're going to go to track 1, drums. We're going to hit pad A01. We're going to select our drum kick. A kick drum. Now we're going to go to Program Edit, Effects, and on Insert 1, assign the Mother Ducker Input plugin. It's under the Dynamics, and then Akai Pro. Mother Ducker Input. So you select that. Now we're going to hit the pencil icon to reveal the effect settings pop-up. As you can see, there's not much going on here. The only parameter is the 2 parameter, which tells the mother ducker which virtual bus it will route the kick drum through. There are 8 buses to choose from, but let's just leave it set to the default bus 1. Now we're going to go to main. Let's insert the mother ducker across this entire bass program. So we're going to hit the eyeball icon to reveal the inspector. We're going to tap on the inserts box and choose the mother ducker plugin from Dynamics, and then Akai Pro mother ducker, and then tap on the pencil icon to bring up the effect settings box for mother ducker. We're going to now learn about tweaking the mother ducker. The first thing to do is to ensure that the mother ducker compressor is configured to act on the audio being sent from the mother ducker input. We previously set this to be routed to bus 1, so in the mother ducker, make sure that from is also set to bus 1. On the left hand side are the compression settings, while the right handles the various metering duties. I suggest you begin by setting the compressor to neutral settings. Specifically turn the threshold to 0 decibels. And the ratio to 1.00 to 1. Hit play start and observe the meters on the right hand side. The red in meter shows us the level of the bass before any compression is applied. The red out meter shows us the level of the bass after compression is applied. The gray key meter shows us the signal level coming from the mother ducker input. Okay. That's the level of the kick. You can see that each time the kick plays, the key meter shows a rapid increase in level. Finally, the gray reduc meter shows us the amount of signal reduction being applied to our bass. Unlike other meters, this acts in no reduction in bass level. Now set the threshold a bit lower, say around -4 decibels. And a ratio of around 4:1. Alright. Now whenever the kick exceeds this lower threshold, the compressor acts on the bass, producing a reduction in level. This reduction is controlled by the ratio setting. Alright. Attack and release work in the same way as a normal compressor. Try setting the release very long, such as 500 milliseconds. It now takes much longer for the mother ducker to recover from compressing the bass. In fact, the signal level doesn't recover quick enough between bass notes, causing a fading pumping effect. Setting too high an attack will mean the compressor is not able to act quick enough, so will effectively disable the compressor. The knee dictates how gentle the initial compression action is. Increase this if you feel the compression sinks in too harshly. Auto allows the MPC to automatically adjust the output gain. Although I've found the results to be better by handling this manually, at this point it's now a case of tweaking the compression settings to achieve the desired effect. If you want things to sound quite subtle and as natural as possible, you'll need a reasonably short attack and release. And don't go to town on the threshold. The key here is to not aim for complete gain reduction. We're just trying to help the kick punch through the bass without it being obvious to the listener. The settings they used for sequence 2 were as follows. Interesting. Sequence 2. For them, this was about as far as they could take the compression without it beginning to sound excessive. Remember to use the on button at the top right of the screen to temporarily bypass the mother ducker so you can quickly compare the original version with the side-chained version. Okay, wow. I hear the difference now. That's interesting. Okay. In this example, they kept it simple to help explain the concepts behind sidechain compression with mother ducker. Set the mother ducker input on more than one sound. For example, a whole drum kit could be used to trigger the compressor. Do this by inserting the mother ducker input across the entire drum program, or by inserting multiple instances of the mother ducker input to the pads of the sounds you wish to use as the source compression triggers. And remember, there are 8 buses available in mother ducker, so you can have multiple mother ducker inputs configured, each one set to use a different bus. For example, bus 1 uses a kick source to compress the bass, so the kick punches through. And bus 2 uses the vocal to compress rhythm parts of a song, so the vocal doesn't have to compete for space. And also bus 3 uses a lead part to compress background vocals, so it stops the lead part clashing with the vocal harmonies. Alternatives to sidechain: rather than using compression, consider using EQ to give certain sounds more room in a mix. For example, we could have boosted some of the higher frequencies in the kick while simultaneously cutting similar frequencies in the bass. Another alternative is to manually reduce the volume of specific bass notes whenever the kick plays. For sequence data, this could be done by reducing the velocity level of those events or by using volume automation. For audio track performances, use volume automation or directly edit the audio by reducing the gain of selected sections. Okay, so we made it to chapter 22, Advanced Key Group Building. 15 minutes left, so I'm not sure if I should just jump into it for the day or tomorrow to get started and I could just play around with some music for the rest of the time. I'm not sure. If you're watching, jump in the chat. Let me know what you think. Well, that was a very interesting chapter that we just went through anyway. Sound design tricks. That's one that I'll probably come back to again and again to reference and to try and help better understand how all these things can help me make a better sound. I'm just kind of jumping through and looking at chapter 22, and it seems like it's a big chapter, and we might as well just jump right into it for the last 10 minutes or whatever, last 15 minutes, and yeah. There's about, yeah, I'd say at least a full day and a bit. So if we get it started today, probably finish tomorrow. Alright. So let me just jump back here. We're on chapter 22 now. Advanced key group building. We first discovered key group programs back in chapter 10, where we created a simple multi-sampled pad instrument from a single vocal sample. In this chapter, we're going to build some more advanced key group instruments. Using multi-samples in a key group program. When we created a key group program in chapter 10, we used a single sample assigned to a single key group. This key group tuned the sample chromatically across the entire MIDI note range of C-2 to G8, all 128 pads in the MPC. While this worked okay for what was ultimately a pad-like sounding instruments such as acoustic pianos, more samples recorded directly from the notes of the original instrument. This process is called multi-sampling. The samples we record are often referred to as multi-samples. The more notes we assign to our key group instrument, the less note range each sample will need to be tuned to, leading to more realism and sonic quality. Sourcing and configuring your samples. The most common way to source multi-samples is to record them yourself directly from an instrument. If you are multi-sampling an acoustic or electric instrument such as a piano or guitar, you could do this via the sampler screen. Boop. And we had looked at that in chapter 8, so you can view that on my previous videos on YouTube or on Twitch here. And we can also do that via an audio track. We learned about the audio tracks in chapter 12. So refer to Appendix A for more details on how to set up a microphone with your MPC. I've got one right there set up, so I'm all good to go, but if you need any help with that, you can always message me. Oh, hey Andrew. Alright. So yeah, I'll stop here and I'll just toss on some beats and we'll head out, because it seems like you're probably just the only one watching, Andrew. So regardless of recording technique used to create the multi-samples, it's important to configure your sounds before attempting to build a key group program from them. So we'll continue tomorrow on chapter 22, Advanced Key Group Building. And let's just check out we'll go to I'll go to a random beat that I haven't played with in a while, I guess. There, we'll just load that one up. I don't even know what it is. It looks like I only made it on sequence 3 for some reason. Let's check it out. I'll turn it down a sec. Might be loud. Oops. That might load up a bit too much. But wow. Got a lot of drums. Loading up by instrument, drums, and I didn't think that, I had that many drums, but I guess I got a lot of choice in drums. Got a lot of drum packs. Alright, let's go for that. Alright, so that's the beat I'm gonna leave on today. I'll try and send you through with a raid over to another channel. Let's see who we got here for raids. Yeah, okay, we'll send you to N1N3K9. He plays around on PC Live, I believe it is, or MPC1. Not sure, but tomorrow we'll be back with chapter 22, advanced key root building. I'm Philly Good, and this is the Goods Fam on Twitch. Don't forget to subscribe and follow and hit the notification every day, 10 to 11 a.m. for the most part. All right. And let's get that raid going. Start the raid right now. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and that you enjoy the following stream here with N1 N3K9. All right, peace out, guys. I'm gonna raid over now.